Hey friendos, Steve here. So Zack Snyder's Justice League has been released. It's out. It's now on HBO Max. Of course, I stayed up with the friendos over there at the Twitch to watch it live for that entire 4 hours from midnight until 4 a.m. in the morning here on the West Coast. And it was a lot of fun. Doing stuff like that is always a lot more fun when you got a bunch of friendos watching it with you. So thanks very much to all the people who stuck around for all 4 hours to watch Zack Snyder's Justice League. It was a lot of fun. So, of course, here I am on the Friendoville channel. I'm going to talk about the movie itself. First, I'll give you guys sort of a general overview about what I thought about the movie. I'll try to keep spoiler stuff out of it at first. I won't talk about the cameos, the Easter eggs, all that kind of stuff. And then when I want to dive into that kind of stuff, I will let you know. So if you want, you can turn the video off and go watch the movie for yourself. If maybe you're watching this to figure out, hey, I don't know if I want to watch this movie. I don't know if this movie's for me or not. Do I want to watch it? Let me turn it off so I don't get the stuff spoiled for me. So I'm going to cover all that stuff. But first, if I could ask you guys to hit that subscribe button, maybe give this video a thumbs up if you feel it deserves it. And of course, if you want to help support the channel, you can head over to mfshophere.com. That's where I sell my comic books. I've got 2 of them. These things, man, these came out a long time ago, but I got a garage full of them trying to unload them. If you want to know what kind of comic book Steve would be writing, hey, guess what? You can find that out right now at mfshophere.com. You can order a couple of them. We'll sign them for you and get them out on their way. So anyways, let's just dive into it. Zack Snyder's Justice League. You guys know the backstory to this. Back in 2017, Warner Brothers released the first Justice League movie. And oh boy, that was a mess of a movie. It ran in about like an hour and 40 minutes or so. And you guys probably know the story behind it. Originally, it was going to be Zack Snyder's movie. Partway through production, his daughter passed away. And so there are kind of conflicting reports about exactly what happened. Either he was kicked off or he decided to leave. I imagine that kind of stuff probably isn't going to be made public because it's private business. I mean, I know there's an official story out there, but you never know about this kind of stuff. So anyways, for that reason, Zack Snyder left the project. Warner Brothers brought in Joss Whedon, of course, the guy who did the Avengers movies, to basically finish it up. But essentially, he made a brand new movie, completely rewrote the script, did a bunch of reshoots. They brought Henry Cavill back in for these ridiculous scenes where like he had a mustache and then all of a sudden it was all weird and stuff. The movie was critically panned, didn't do as well as people are expecting the box office. I think it was like $650 million, which, yeah, seems like a lot of money. But in today's, big box office billion-dollar movie landscape, it's kind of, it pretty much underperformed. And so fans got together and said, hey, we know Snyder, he has all this footage that he shot. He didn't get to get his vision out there. Let's do this, Warner Brothers. And of course, those fans got laughed off until HBO Max came around. They're like, hey, we got this new streaming service. This is sort of a unique situation where there is an intense fan demand for something. We have the money to put into this, to like do some reshoots. All the actors were on board with it. Everybody seems to hate Joss Whedon because he's a piece of crap and he was abusive on the set and he completely gutted a lot of the Zack Snyder's vision for the Justice League movie. So what we got was this weird Frankenstein of like, superficially some of Zack Snyder's stylistic aesthetics with just a completely gutted script. So that's the story. They put, I think, about $70 million into this movie to sort of redo it. And what we got was a 4-hour Justice League movie. That's compared to the hour and 40 minutes that we got back in 2017. I watched this when it came out, and then I'd actually seen the 2017 version in the theaters. I didn't like it at all. There were aspects of it that I did like, but it was not an easy movie to follow. It barely felt like it was. It's the weirdest thing. It's as if it's as if somebody at Warner Brothers was like, yeah, we don't really want to do this Zack Snyder stuff anymore. So let's just try to cobble together a piece of crap that's going to bomb so we can start clean. I don't know if that's the case. Hollywood's a crazy place. It's a weird place. Maybe that is what happened. I don't know. But that's the one thing that stands out. And I'm going to talk about the runtime in a bit here. That's the one thing that stands out to me about Zack Snyder's version of the Justice League. When compared to, I went back today and I sort of watched them for a bit side by side to a degree. I mean, the movies are vastly different in terms of how they're sequenced and edited and everything. Even like individual scenes that are in both movies are edited differently. And it's kind of interesting to see. But the most interesting thing, the thing that stands out the most to me between these two movies is that the Snyder Cut really seems to have a lot of reverence and respect for the subject material. So these characters sort of, I think Zack Snyder had been with them for a while and understands where he wants to take it. And with the Joss Whedon version, it's almost as if it's a self-conscious movie. It's like a movie that's kind of embarrassed to exist. And Zack Snyder, look, I'll give you the bottom line on this movie really quick. If you liked Man of Steel and then you went into Batman versus Superman, it was like, oh, wow, I really dig this. This is really good. You're going to be into this movie. I mean, it is the natural logical extension of Batman versus Superman. It is the next entry in that series. The 2017 Justice League movie just didn't feel like that. It felt like somebody took these characters and didn't really understand them. So, I mean, if you want specific examples of that, I have a couple stuff written down here, so it might look like I'm reading. I am reading. It feels like a lot of that sort of silly juvenile shit that we got in the 2017 version. Like, for example, the scene where they're underground and they're fighting Steppenwolf and whatnot. And the Flash comes falling down onto Wonder Woman and he ends up with like his face on her chest. That kind of stuff made that movie. But yet in the Snyder Cut, he just treats Wonder Woman with a lot more respect. I mean, you can see it in the 2017 version, how Whedon treats Wonder Woman with his camera versus how Snyder treats Wonder Woman with his camera. How he has Aquaman treat Wonder Woman, the Amazonians and the Atlanteans, and, you know, their sort of tribal war at, you know, their I don't know about hatred for each other, but, you know, they're just not on the same page, I guess. How Aquaman treats her in the 2017 version versus how they have conversations in this new version, in the Snyder version. The bottom line is this. It simply seems that Zack Snyder has a real reverence. He's trying to tell a big story here. And so he has this very, you know, sort of lush, very melodramatic soundtrack running through it. And it's sort of a mix of like Nick Cave songs with like some sort of like choir type stuff. It really heightens the drama of this story he's trying to tell. And meanwhile, you know, I think at the time in 2017, because of how popular the Avengers thing was with, you know, a lot of sort of bantery type scenes with the Avengers. I mean, part of the Avengers stuff, part of the MCU stuff is their use of comedy. And it's a very relatable franchise. That's why they do that. And I guess Warner Brothers just wanted more of that. So they just sort of jammed in a bunch of forced, you know, kind of silly scenes between these characters that just felt that way. It just felt forced. So there, I mean, there's a scene, to go back to the Wonder Woman bit. There's a scene, and this isn't really spoiling much, to be honest with you, but there's a scene in the Snyder Cut that is sort of an example of this. It's like the one time any of the characters sort of sexualize Wonder Woman, and it's when the Flash and Cyborg are digging up Superman's body, his coffin. And it, by the way, they're two completely different scenes. Like it's the same setting. They're both digging them up in both movies, but the conversations are completely different. And at the end, Flash says, "Hey, Wonder Woman, right? Do you think she'd go for a younger man?" And Cyborg responds with, "Well, she's 5,000 years old. We're all younger men," which is actually a really great scene because it adds context to Diana, Wonder Woman, pining over Chris Pine, his character, Steve Trevor. The joke that we were telling in the chat was, and, you know, at first I was like, man, it's been 100 years. Like, why is she still obsessing over this one guy? Well, 100 years to a 5,000-year-old is basically like last month. Plus, she just saw him 30 years ago in the 1980s. But so that kind of stuff just leads you to, it just shows that Snyder knows these characters really, really well. Whereas in the 2017 version, that kind of stuff was stripped away. All in all, he has these characters act within the bounds of their strengths and weaknesses. And Whedon just sort of came in with the goal of sort of lightening it up and just added these forced moments of brevity that really didn't fit in the movie. So that's the one thing that I sort of took away first was, man, even in the first 15 minutes, you can see, okay, he's really setting the scene with some heavy stuff here. And you can get that way. You can get that through the soundtrack through. Yes, there's a lot of slow motion in this movie. And we'll get to that in a second here. But he's really taking his time and he's really trying to get across how much love he has for these characters, because he is doing something very specific in this movie thematically that I didn't really get in the 2017 version. The 2017 version was a lot of like Batman, like Alfred trying to set up Batman and Wonder Woman. It was just kind of, I don't know, it was all over the place. We'll talk about this really quick before I'm going to get into some spoiler stuff. We'll talk about two things, runtime and the aspect ratio. So runtime is kind of an interesting thing. It's a 4-hour movie. I kind of feel like this was the movie that would have been the ultimate edition, if you will, of what would have come out in the theaters. So if you guys recall, Batman versus Superman was, I don't know, it's probably like a 2.5 to 3 hour movie. Avengers Endgame, I think, ended up being just a hair over 3 hours. I think it was about 3 hours. And that's about the limit that studios would take theatrical releases. They rarely go to 3 hours. They almost never go anywhere past that. I feel like in this day and age when, so to backtrack really quick, on HBO Max, they have the Batman versus Superman Ultimate Edition, which is like an elongated version it's like a director's cut version, I guess, of Batman versus Superman. So it added probably about 30 minutes to it. I don't know the exact figure. But it's a movie that fills in a lot of the blanks that might not need to be filled in, but it does. And I have not actually seen it yet. I'm judging this from many criticisms I've seen online. It's a superior movie in that it tells a fuller story. Now, that could be a detriment to Zack Snyder's reputation, is that the guy can't tell a full enough story in 3 hours or 2.5 hours, which for theatrical releases probably just doesn't work. For something in the age of streaming, when, by necessity because of the pandemic, the streaming companies like HBO Max are like, hey, you know what? We're just going to be releasing this stuff. We have a ton of money. We want people to come to our service. We're going to be releasing this stuff crazy like. So we have the ability to do a 4-hour movie because people can pick and choose when they leave the movie and when they come back to the movie. If they want to watch it in 4 sittings or in 2 sittings, they can do that. There was a bit of a precedent established not too long ago with The Irishman, Martin Scorsese's The Irishman. That was a 3.5 hour long movie. It was really long, but it was the story that Martin Scorsese wanted to tell in that amount of time. Was it too long? That's kind of up to the viewer to decide. I don't know that runtime is an issue these days. I do feel like this movie probably could have been 3 hours long and made it to the theaters that way. There are a lot of scenic route moments in this movie where the director, Zack Snyder, will linger a little bit longer than he should. Part of his general aesthetic in movie making has traditionally been the use of slow motion. A lot of people like that. They feel like it adds to the drama. A lot of people don't. They feel like it just belabors things and it sort of loses its effectiveness after a while. And eventually you're just seeing everybody go slow. My good buddy Jeff was texting me about while he was watching the movie, and he was like, having the Flash, his world slow down around him is a great use of his speed force, right? That's a great visualization. Everything else slows down around him. But he felt it wasn't as effective given that there's so much slow-mo in the movie. I just watched Man of Steel again tonight, and there isn't a whole lot of slow motion in that movie. And I feel like it's a pretty, that's like my favorite of the bunch. It's a really effective movie because he takes a much more subtle approach to his style in that movie. This is a very Zack Snyder movie, and a lot of people really dig that. I'll be honest, I can sort of give or take the slow-mo stuff. Yeah, there was a lot of it in this movie. So yeah, I kind of feel like this was the movie that we would have gotten eventually. I mean, God, like, I think like the epilogue itself is like 20, 25 minutes or something like that. And that probably would have been like, you could have done the epilogue in like 2 5-minute like credit scenes. You know what I mean? There's that. There's the runtime. I think that in today's landscape with streaming, runtime is a bit less of an issue. Although once movie theaters are fully reopened and the movie experience is back to where it was before, which I don't even know if that's going to be the case. HBO Max with this sort of same day as release thing. I know they're going to try it in 2021 with, all their big movies this year. Who knows if it's going to continue into the future? They're probably making money hand over fist with this kind of stuff. If a guy like Zack Snyder wants to continue some Justice League stuff, maybe they'll say, hey, listen, if you want an 8-episode series, you can have an 8-episode series. They have all the money in the world, and really that's kind of all that matters. Runtime these days with everything streaming might not be an issue. One thing I was not a fan of, I'll be honest with you, is the 4:3 aspect ratio. Now, you guys probably know what I'm talking about, and that's where you have 2 black bars. I'll just do it here in the thing. It's where you have 2 black bars on either side. It's a box. Basically, it's a box. Like, I'm 42 years old. I grew up on basically 4:3 aspect ratio TV screens. And every time I would get a movie on VHS, I'd always look for the letterboxed version because I didn't want my movies being told in a square. And I know it's not a square, it's 4:3, but it kind of looks like a square. And so I wasn't a big fan of that. You have this entire canvas. Why not use it? And then when I looked it up and I read that he just sort of was fascinated with the 4:3 format all of a sudden, I don't know if artistically you should just go off your whatever sort of floats your boat in the moment. I'm not one to question somebody's artistic integrity. I don't want to do that here. I personally, it did sort of take me out of the movie. The movie felt a little smaller given that it was 4:3. Was it his vision? Should that be respected? Sure. Why not? You're doing this whole thing. You might as well let him do whatever he wants to do, right? I am personally a much bigger fan of the widescreen. The wider, the better. The thicker the letterboxes are, the better, to be honest with you. If it's just like a sliver of film, I'm happy with that. The box, not a big fan of the box. I'll just end on this note. Before we get into spoilers, I mean, is the movie any good? Is it a good movie? From a technical standpoint, unlike the 2017 Justice League movie, this movie is actually fairly coherent. It's fairly easy to follow. It's filled with some good concepts that sometimes hit, sometimes miss. Underneath sort of the inherent ridiculousness of a superhero movie that this is, and let's face it, all superhero movies, you can't show me one superhero movie that doesn't have just a wealth of plot holes. They all do. In the Avengers Endgame was just plot hole after plot hole after plot hole. But guess what? Nobody really cared because we all care about these characters so much that we're willing to go along for the emotional impact. What I liked about this movie was that underneath all that superhero stuff was basically just an essay on family and the validation we all get from strong family bonds. I mean, if you take a look at all these characters here, again, I wrote this down, so I'm going to be reading some of this stuff. Wonder Woman, for example, she keeps herself alienated from her own family while she grieves for the one person that she felt a strong enough bond with to perhaps one day start her own family with, Steve Trevor. Lois Lane and Martha Kent, obviously in this movie, are dealing with the loss of not just Lois Lane, her husband, boyfriend, were they ever actually married? I don't know. With Lois Lane's, we'll just call him husband for all intents and purposes. And then, of course, Martha's son, that whole Man of Steel movie was all about that too, with his father being lost. Batman, come on, that guy's got family issues all over him. Flash's dad in jail for innocently, or he was convicted for the murder of his wife, Flash's mom, and apparently he didn't commit that particular crime. And of course, Cyborg, whose dad pieced him back together after a car wreck, took his mom and almost took his life. But now he's like a freak. And of course, you can't help but feel, especially at the very end when Zack Snyder does sort of pay tribute to his own daughter, you can't help but feel that this guy understands the value of family bonds. I mean, the entire time Batman's trying to put together a new family for him, and he has no problem in being kind of cheesy and corny and gleeful about putting together his squad. It's like running through the whole movie. But you can't help but feel like what Zack Snyder went through, this movie might mean a bit more to him, given his own issues with his family during the filming of it. So, I mean, even the villain, even Steppenwolf, was trying to get validation from Darkseid. I mean, if you look at one of the great things about this movie also, and I'm going to start, so I'll start talking about spoiler stuff now. So if you've gotten this far, you should have a good indication as to whether or not you'd want to watch it based on what I've talked about already, if you give a crap about what I talk about. The character of Steppenwolf compared to the 2017 version is like, they use the same motion and everything, but they have a completely different model for Steppenwolf. He's this huge monster guy covered in this awesome, like, gold armor. But his face is almost childlike because he's trying to get the validation from Darkseid the entire time. And we see what happens to Steppenwolf when he can't get that validation. So there you go. There's my take on the movie. I'm going to lightning around some things that I liked. We'll talk about some Easter eggs. The movie isn't without its flaws. Obviously, some of the earnestness from Zack Snyder can sometimes just come off as wooden or stilted. The plot is, like I mentioned this before, most superhero movies, the plot itself is just sort of held together by plot contrivances sometimes, lucky happenstance, tons of exposition. During that final battle scene, or one of the fun when they're driving through the abandoned nuclear town, Batman keeps on getting his ass saved by like Wonder Woman and Aquaman left and right. There's a lot of luck that goes into these superhero movies. There's a lot of coincidence that goes into these superhero movies. But the movie by and large makes sense. Like, there was a lot of moments during this movie where I was like, oh, that makes so much more sense now. I totally understand this a lot more than I did back in 2017. Like, why did they cut this scene out? It is still, it's absolutely mind-boggling that Warner Bros. Put that movie out back in 2017. So basically it boils down to, if you were a fan of where this story was headed, if you liked Batman versus Superman but found massive faults with Justice League in 2017, give this one a try. You might actually dig it. You might be into it and you might want to see more. And it wouldn't shock me if HBO Max plunked down the money to maybe do some more stuff. One of the major upgrades, so I'm getting into spoiler territory now, so turn the damn video off if you are not into listening to spoilers. So one of the major upgrades to the movie is the inclusion of Darkseid, and especially the end of the story itself. So in the original story, it was basically just Steppenwolf. There was barely a mention of Darkseid. In this movie, the merging of the three mother boxes actually does happen before Cyborg's able to separate them. And when that starts to happen, when they're able to, Flash has to go back in time. He has to he does the Superman 1 thing where he starts going really fast and he has to go faster than the speed of light to sort of fix what happened. And then the Justice League sort of team up on Steppenwolf. Wonder Woman ends up punctuating it with the last move by cutting his head off as he's flying into this gate where Darkseid is lurking with his minions, and Granny Goodness is there and stuff. And Wonder Woman slices Steppenwolf's head off, and it goes flying over to Darkseid, and it just lands at his feet. And they're all just standing there on the other side of the gate, staring at Darkseid. It's the moment that people would have been clapping in the movie theaters. That moment, the reintroduction of Superman into that battle scene when he comes to protect Cyborg. And that's one of the coolest things about this movie, is that the real, like, the people who come through in a pinch in this movie aren't your Superman, Batman, or Wonder Woman. It's the two sort of babies of the group. It's the two characters who need this family more than anybody, and that's the Flash and it's Cyborg. They're the ones who stand out the most, and it's awesome to see that. Flash, it's funny because I didn't realize this until I talked to my stepkid, till I talked to Summer. She was like, man, Flash was really annoying in that first one, in the 2017 version. And he's a lot better in this one. And I had to think about it. So when I went back to watch it today, I was watching some of the other Flash scenes that had been cut out, and he's so much more of a nervous Nelly in the 2017 version. And yeah, he's kind of grating as opposed to the Flash that we see in this one. That's one of the things that I actually really appreciated about the movie as well, was the Flash, the treatment of the Flash. I thought that the one scene that he had where the dude spilled his burger on the floor of his truck and he barreled into Iris West's car and the Flash came in and saved her was such a beautiful, beautiful scene and a wonderful take on the Flash character. I thought it was absolutely magnificent. The use of music, the use of the computer graphics, everything slowing down to a crawl, like a car crash slowing down to a crawl, all the way to sort of the punchline of the scene in a comedic moment where he's with some dogs and a hot dog. It was real. I thought the Flash was handled very, very well. And I'm glad that he was such a focal point, because I think that Zack Snyder probably wants to get him off to a good foot now that they're doing that Flashpoint movie, which could open up the door to more Snyder stuff because you're dealing with the multiverse. Let's talk about the epilogue really quick. You had Lex Luthor escaping prison, seemingly with the help of the Joker, perhaps. Him giving Deathstroke the name of Bruce Wayne to go after. That was, obviously a nice shout out to the Suicide Squad thing there, which that's going to be, I think, the next DC movie that comes out in August, which should be a killer movie. I did not watch the first Suicide Squad. I saw a couple minutes of it. I didn't like any of it, but there's a whole new thing. James Gunn, absolutely this is going to be great. You had, of course, the nightmare scene where Batman and his new friend Deathstroke, along with Cyborg and Mira from Aquaman, Amber Heard, are roaming around like the sort of terraformed Earth, and the Joker is there with them, and so we finally get some Jared Leto Joker seen through sort of Zack Snyder's lens. The small bits of Joker stuff I saw in Suicide Squad, I didn't like at all. I dug this. I thought this was a really cool take. I think that I like that everybody has their own takes on the Joker whenever they do them. I liked Joaquin Phoenix's take on the Joker, even though I wasn't a fan of that movie. I liked the direction on this scene. I thought it was really, really well done. And yeah, I'd like to see more of that interaction. I'd like to see like a series or a movie set. Like apparently Justice League 2 is supposed to all be in that nightmare, universe or whatever, the alternate timeline. And Joker even mentions alternate timelines in this. I thought it was a really, really cool scene. Thought it was rad. And I love that Batman cursed in it. He said, "I'll fucking kill you." I thought that was awesome. I thought it was so cool. I really did. Let's talk. Oh, and then of course, the Martian Manhunter. I thought the CG was a little bit wonky on the Martian Manhunter. Hopefully, if they actually use his character in any future projects, they'll beef that up a little bit. But I really liked that it ended up being the character from Man of Steel, the general that we saw. What's his name? Swanwick, something like that. Swazwick. I don't know what his name is. Anyways, I marked out big time when I saw the Martian Manhunter. That was rad when he ended up being Martha talking to Lois Lane. And then it was like, oh crap, it's the general. I thought that was a really cool moment. Let's talk about some Easter eggs that I noticed. I'm sure there's a ton more out there. For example, right before I filmed this video, I noticed the Zack Snyder cameo at about the 16-minute mark when Lois Lane's coming out of a coffee shop. He's playing a barista. I did notice in one of the scenes, there was the Kingdom Come version of Batman, his suit, which is like a sort of a protective shell thing around him for when Batman was super old, but he still needed a Batman suit. That was in one of the scenes. I saw Supergirl's suit in one of the scenes where Superman goes like back to his old ship or whatever. The tank from Dark Knight Returns was in this. I'm pretty sure this was in the first one, but there was during the fight between Darkseid and like the ancients of Earth. I like the mention and the appearances of the Green Lanterns. I thought that was pretty cool. Other things that I liked really quick. There was no weird upper lip. Of course, the upper lip was all Joss Whedon reshoots. So if you guys remember in 2017, one of the big complaints, and it completely took me out of the movie from moment one, was when Superman showed up in the first frame. He had like a blurry upper lip because Henry Cavill, when he's brought back for reshoots, had a mustache he couldn't get rid of because he was shooting Mission Impossible. It was so nice not to see any of that. And it was a bunch, because they did a bunch of reshoots for the end of the 2017 Justice League movie. And that's another thing that I noticed is that when you watch the end of that Justice League movie, Superman does all the heavy lifting. He comes in and he basically saves Cyborg's ass in getting those cubes separated. And you see the weird mustache and you're like, oh, why did they reshoot this? It's the end of the movie. And Superman wasn't needed. You had Cyborg, you had the Flash, you had these two guys who knew what they were doing. So no weird upper lip. That was amazing. That was great. I thought the score was really good. I think for whatever you feel about Zack Snyder, I appreciate his use of music in movies. I really do. Probably because I just saw Man of Steel. He used Soundgarden Seasons. I'm in, man. I'm in. He used some Nick Cave tunes here. I thought it was really, really good. The scene where Aquaman goes back into the water and that weird, like, choir group, that chorus of girls, are singing. I thought, it was great. That was really good stuff. Let's see here. Mention that. Of course, the shout out to the Death of Superman storyline. Superman coming back in his black Superman suit with the silver S on the chest, I thought was awesome. Wish they would have gone with the mullet. According to Zack Snyder, he asked Warner Brothers, hey, can we go with the mullet here? They said no. Wanted that mullet. Think the mullet would have been great. Of course, Cyborg, his relationship with his dad was the emotional through line of this movie. The death of his dad, sacrificing himself so that his son could save the world, was the emotional climax of this movie. It was absolutely beautiful. It was wonderful, and his voiceover narration at the end really punctuated things. It was really beautiful that Cyborg got such a great, fleshed out role in this movie. Thought it was magnificent. Very briefly, mention the multiverse, which is going to come into play in the future movies that are coming up here with the Flashpoint stuff and how they're sort of handling the DC universe going forward with Michael Keaton coming back to be Batman. I hope Ben Affleck doesn't decide to completely stop being Batman. I'd love to see his take on the Batman again. I think it'd be great. But yeah, Steppenwolf mentioned the multiverse when he was talking about the anti-life equation and with Darkseid. And then, yeah, it seems like they're setting up for more. Hopefully, I know that Zack Snyder has said that Warner Brothers has made him say that this isn't canon. There's no reason this shouldn't be canon. There's no reason whatsoever. This absolutely should be the definitive version of the Justice League. It's just a far superior movie. It might not be for everybody, but it is a far superior telling of this story. Some of the things I didn't like before we wrap it up. Some of the CG was a little bit on the wonky side. You got to figure they're putting $70 million into this. It really shows. Martian Manhunter looked kind of weird. He looked kind of like, not quite what you'd get on the CW, but not too far away either. The plot point of all the races of Earth not being able to figure out how to properly hide these mother boxes was kind of laughable to me. How you see like the humans just sort of burying it in dirt, like a couple inches, a couple feet maybe under the ground, was kind of silly. The Atlanteans really couldn't figure out how to like hide this mother box. The Amazonians couldn't either. Thought that was kind of silly. It was kind of a unintentionally humorous moment here in that movie. And that's pretty much it. Like I said, if you like Batman versus Superman, this movie is much more in line with that than the 2017 Justice League. If you're not a fan of Zack Snyder movies, you're not going to like this movie. It's not going to be for you. So don't spend 4 hours on it. Anyways, like I said, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button. Give this video a thumbs up if you feel it deserves it. And of course, mfshophere.com. If you want to know what kind of comic book Steve here is making or was making and still wants to make. I've got one on the burner, man. It's almost cooked. It's almost fully cooked. And I'm going to be dropping that at MF Shop here at some point this year. Promise. Anyways, thanks everybody for tuning in. I appreciate it. Hey, I want to know your comments. I want to know how you guys feel about this movie. Leave your comments below. Let me know what you thought about it. Hopefully you saw it, and then you can comment on it as opposed to just saying, oh, I don't want to see this piece of crap. I don't want to watch this movie. I'm going to go see The Winter Soldier and Falcon, which is, by the way, coming on in about an hour. I got to go. Thanks for watching, everybody. Till next time, I'll talk to you later.